Hi grade 11s. So today we're going to be starting our new unit. We kind of already started it doing our COVID assignment, but we're going to be looking at the immune system. So how we're going to do this unit, it's going to take us about a week, and what we're going to do is we're going to have our notes here. So I'm going to give you the notes a little bit at a time, and then what you are going to do, instead of having an assignment due every day, you're going to have this definition and description sheet. So basically, for whatever we cover during that day, you're going to watch the video or read through the notes and then fill in a definition or kind of description of the following terms, so the most important terms. So it's a little bit less work, and then at the end of this week, I'll get you just to submit that as one large folder, or I guess one large file, and then that will be your only assignment for this immune system, okay? So we'll start off with this super funny meme. It says, me, immune system, why do I have a fever? Immune system, well, the bacteria can't survive more than 37 degrees for a long time, so I thought I could raise the temperature to kill them. Me, we also can't survive more than 37 degrees for a long time. Immune system. That's really funny. That's good quality humor. Okay, that's good stuff. That's what memes are for. Anyways, so we'll start looking at the immune system. So our immune system is a group of organs and cells that work together to help maintain your health, fighting off invaders, such as germs or harmful substances that could cause you to become sick. So invaders are often called antigens. Antigens are any substance that the body decides are an invader. In case of allergies, your immune system is overreacting to a substance that is not a harmful invader, but we're going to talk about that later on. So the term antigen is derived from the term antibody generator. So if we know what an antigen is, and it's coming from the term antibody generator, what's an antibody? An antibody is something that attacks antigens by attaching themselves to the antigen. When an antibody attaches to an antigen, the antigen is unable to spread or it becomes neutralized. So keep clear in your mind that an antigen is something that is harmful or bad. Antibody is something that attacks or gets rid of an antigen. So those two words are similar, but make sure that you keep them separated in your head. Okay? So it's not as simple as antibodies attack antigens, so we're going to take a little bit more look at the complexity of the immune system. Now, this is not exactly how everything works. We're going to look at kind of a general overview of everything. If you got really into depth, you could take a whole course on just how the immune system works. So we're just going to look at a couple different parts. So one of the big things with your immune system is your white blood cells. So before we get too deep into how the system works, we want to talk about what white blood cells are and the different types of white blood cells that you need to know for this course. Again, we could get way into depth into white blood cells and how those even work, but we're just going to look at the surface and kind of get a general idea of the different types of white blood cells. So white blood cells are warriors that keep you safe. They fight for your health no matter what. There are two types of white blood cells that we'll look at. These are called phagocytes and lymphocytes. So the phagocytes eat and kill antigens, and lymphocytes are fighters in the specific defense and we have two types. So we'll talk about the specific defense later. Just know that lymphocytes go with specific defense and the phagocytes are with non-specific, and we're going to talk about non-specific today. So phagocytes, like we talked about, destroy the invader. They work best during non-specific response of the body. There are three types of phagocytes, which are macrophages, neutrophils, and monocytes. They all use phagocytosis to eat the antigen. Lymphocytes are the second type of white blood cell. They're broken down into B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Those are often called B cells and T cells. B cells create our antibodies, which we talked about, and T cells destroy the infected cell itself. So antibodies are getting rid of the antigen, the T cells are destroying the infected cell. And again, we're going to talk about these more later. I just wanted to make sure that you had a clear breakdown of phagocytes being macrophage, neutrophil, and monocyte, and lymphocytes being the B cells and the T cells. So let's look at our non-specific defense. So the first line of defense is outer parts of the body, such as the skin, the hair in your nose, or your earwax. Larger particles that could potentially contain pathogens get blocked from entering directly into the body. So don't clear out your earwax, it keeps you safe. Some other first line defenders are also the cilia in the upper respiratory tract. So just in the top part of your trachea, there's little hairs that actually sweep up into the throat. So anything that got caught in when you were breathing in, those little particles get swept back up into the throat so they can be coughed out or they can be swallowed. And then if a pathogen is swallowed, it goes into the stomach, which is highly acidic. So we have a full outer coating, which is your skin. We have different layers of little hairs and particles like earwax that actually stop pathogens from even entering the body. And then if they do, we do have little hairs in our trachea, and our stomach is so acidic that it kills lots of germs and lots of antigens right away. So we have a fairly good first line of defense. That's why you don't get sick all the time. We have this constantly working, constantly shedding skin cells, constantly coughing out different things. Your stomach's always acidic, keeping you safe. So we have that working all the time to really help defend against everyday germs that you're coming into contact with all the time. So if something gets past our first line of defense, we have our inflammatory response. So if your body gets damaged in any way, you have an immediate inflammatory response. This response can be seen through redness, swelling, heat, and pain. So there's 3 steps to our inflammatory response that you need to know about. The first step, when something cuts you or bruises you or hits you, histamine, which is just a chemical mediator, so remembering the word histamine, is released by the damaged cells. So if you have a cut on your hand, there's damaged cells all around that area. Histamine is released by those damaged cells. Mast cells, which are a type of white blood cell, also join the histamine, and they work to make the capillary, so all the little capillaries or the capillary beds in that area that was damaged, more permeable. So when something becomes more permeable, that means that more material can flow through it easier. So fluid and cells can more easily flow in and out of the capillary. So extra material going into the space is what causes it to swell. So if you just cut your hand, you might notice some swelling right away, and that's because histamine and mast cells have allowed more material to enter that space because it's the white blood cells and extra blood flow that will allow that area to heal. So after histamine and mast cells have made the space more permeable, we have our phagocytes, so macrophages, neutrophils, and monocytes entering the damaged area. These use phagocytosis, which hence phagocytes, to destroy the antigens. So phagocytosis is when one cell engulfs another cell, creating a vacuole inside of the phagocyte. So you have a cut on your hand, histamine and mast cells made it so that those macrophages, say, were able to break through the capillaries into that space, and they start to engulf and get rid of any of those bad antigens that may have gotten in through that open wound. So basically all of our phagocytes are eating the bad cells. If you want to see how phagocytosis works, you can just take a look at this link. And then step 3, some of the phagocytes die during this process and form a whitish material full of dead skin and white blood cells. This is called pus. So anytime that you have a wound, or maybe you've had a zit, I'm not sure, those are full of pus, which is actually caused whenever your body's fighting off an infection. So if there's some sort of particle under your skin, or if you had that cut and there was pus that formed, it's actually because all of those phagocytes, they were attacking and getting rid of the antigens, but after that process they actually died and their little tiny cell bodies were all left there, and so that's how we get that formation of pus. So basically this is our inflammatory response. You have histamine and mast cells that are making the capillaries more permeable, so more phagocytes like macrophages, neutrophils, and monocytes can enter that damaged area, and they are using phagocytosis to get rid of all those bad cells that have entered the body, and then after that they die and they actually form kind of a little ball of pus where the wound was, and that means that the body had to fight off an infection. So that's all we're going to cover for today. So we've looked at what the immune system is. So up here we talked about the immune system and some of the basic parts, that you have an antigen that needs to be fought off by an antibody. we looked at the different types of white blood cells, and we really talked and focused on the phagocytes today because they work in our non-specific response. So again, our non-specific responses are our first line of defense, which we talked about our whole body having an outer coating, different hair follicles, acidity of the stomach. And then we looked at the inflammatory response, which is the path of histamine and mast cells, allowing phagocytes to perform their duties, and then killing off the infection and leaving behind a little pocket of pus so that we know that an infection was fought off. So that's all we're going to cover for today. So make sure, again, you're coming back to your definitions and descriptions, and you're going to write in what's a definition and a description of the immune system: antigen, antibody, white blood cells, phagocytes include all 3 types, lymphocytes include 2 types. Talk about the non-specific response, the first line of defense, and the inflammatory response: histamine, phagocytosis, formation of pus. So there's quite a bit of kind of notes or definitions and descriptions to go over today, but once you kind of get through this first part, it will really make it easier for you to understand the more complex parts of the immune system coming up, which are our specific B cells and T cells, which are a little bit trickier to understand, but we will get through it. And like I say, make sure you get these definitions written down so you have a good understanding of the current material.